thinking about how burnout shows up for us, it's almost like this sneaky little villain that we need to watch out for, right? It's emotional exhaustion. You're just drained at the end of the day. You're not feeling connected to your patients or clients. And then that spills over into your personal life. It can affect your relationships, how much you're looking forward to things, your physical health. You may find yourself snapping at your loved ones or losing interest in your hobbies.
This episode is sponsored by Therapy Notes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 312 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and glad you're with me. Glad you're with me on this journey. And this is your first time listening to the podcast. Please take time to follow us and leave a review and rate the podcast. That way, more people can find out about it. So, looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Liane Wood. And Liane is a psychotherapist located up in Ontario, Canada. And in this particular episode, we talk about burnout and also setting boundaries for ourselves and a little bit about time management. And I think that's a great topic to start the year off with, because I know for me, I'm really looking at how I'm spending my time, really creating a new routine for myself. I've gone through a lot of changes this past year. You'll see, you'll hear more about that, but really trying to figure out what is going to be my new normal in this new year and how I want to manage my life. And so we delve into some of those things, and particularly some of the problems that we run into as therapists, particularly by not setting good boundaries. We talk with our clients a lot about boundaries, but I think sometimes we're not so good at it ourselves. I know I've been guilty of that, in particular, not sticking to my schedule and overscheduling myself and overscheduling clients and that sort of thing. So we talk about some of the hacks around that in this particular episode. But before we get to my conversation with Liane, one of the things that I'd invite you to do is become part of the Practice of Therapy community. It's a free way for you to join in conversations just around all the ups and downs of running a private practice and just being able to connect with other people. One of the things that I've learned over the last few years is the importance of community, not only in my personal life, but in my business life, and how important that is to be able to connect with others to kind of move the needle forward. So I'd like for you to check out the Practice of Therapy community. I've got it housed on the Circle platform, which the reason for that is I really wanted to kind of get away from having to deal with the algorithms of social media, like on LinkedIn or Facebook, those sorts of things. So if you'll go to practiceoftherapy.com/community, you can sign up to be part of the Practice of Therapy community. And it is free for you to do that. It's free to get on the Circle app. And I'd love to have you as part of the conversations there and ask your questions. So again, check it out, practiceoftherapy.com/community. And also, real quickly here before we get to my conversation with Liane, I'd love for you to hear from one of the members of the Psychcraft Network. You can find out more about the Psychcraft Network by going to psychcraftnetwork.com. It's a podcast network that I started a couple of years ago, and I've got a lot of great colleagues and other podcasts that are located there. And maybe you can discover some new content for yourself and new ideas by listening to some of the podcasts that are on that particular channel. So check it out, psychcraftnetwork.com. And like I said, here's a message from one of those folks, and also a word from our sponsor of the podcast, Therapy Notes.
Hey there. If we haven't met, my name is Lisa Mustard, and I'm the person behind the scenes of the Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard, a podcast where I interview seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapists from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. Plus, you can also earn continuing education contact hours from some of my episodes. So to learn more about the show and get your first continuing education contact hour for free, head on over to my site, lisamustard.com.
Have you ever wished your private practice could run as smoothly as a well-oiled machine? Well, look no further, because Therapy Notes is here to revolutionize your practice. Therapy Notes is the complete practice management system you've been dreaming of. With everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, meet with clients remotely, create rich documentation, and handle insurance billing, it's your secret weapon for a smoother practice. And the best part? It's accessible wherever and whenever you need it. Yep, even on the go. Imagine having more time for what truly matters, your clients. It's like having an extra set of hands, but digital. And here's the kicker. It's the very EHR Gordon relies on in his own practice. So, you know it's the real deal. Say goodbye to paperwork nightmares and hello to more time and better quality care. Check out Therapy Notes today at practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes. Oh, and don't forget to use the promo code GORDON to get 2 months free. That's practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes with the promo code GORDON. Enjoy the show.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm happy for you to get to know today Liane Wood. Welcome, Liane.
Thank you, Gordon. It's lovely to be here with you.
Yes, it's good. And Liane joins us from Ontario, Canada. And so that's always a good thing to get that kind of, I dare I say, international flair. But yeah, but as I start with everyone, Liane, tell folks a little bit more about yourself and how you've landed where you've landed.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm a registered psychotherapist, and I have a private practice in Belleville, Ontario, Canada. So I'm east of Toronto, and we have 4 therapists in the practice. I'm the lead and the clinical supervisor director there. And then my passion is also in, working with therapists and helping them with their practices. And so I do, a number of consults, different things that way with therapists, and just really, helping others to be able to expand their reach and help more people.
Right. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of us out here that are just, I think more and more people are going into private practice just because I think there's so much more autonomy that we feel and being able to set our own schedules and all of those kinds of things. But even if you're not in agency work in the traditional sense, I think we can all tend to get burned out, and we can tend to get our life balance out of whack. And you put a lot of thought into that. So tell us what you're thinking about all of that and what you've learned.
Yeah, well, some of it I've learned the hard way by going through it myself,
Uh-huh.
right? I think, that was really the first piece for me was, being in private practice, and you get those requests coming in from clients. Oh, this time doesn't work for me. Can I see you at a different time? And noticing that, for me, I was starting to book clients outside of my ideal times that I wanted to see clients. And so, and it was easy at first, because it's like, oh, well, I don't need lunch. I can skip lunch. I can do this, or I can do that. I can move this around. And then, as practice gets busier and gets fuller, it's like, why do I have way too many client sessions in a day, like way more than what I was wanting, and realizing it was my own fault because I didn't know how to say no. And then, getting, through those days and really feeling exhausted and no longer looking forward to doing what I was doing. And so, I really learned the hard way that if I didn't take control of my schedule, it was going to run me instead, right? I could either take control of my schedule, or it was going to control me.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's just inherent in kind of our profession is that we are generally pretty nice people, and we'll try to be very accommodating and kind and compassionate to people. But I've experienced it myself, well, can you see me at such and such a time instead of that time, or that sort of thing. And you give into that, and the next thing you know is your schedule is full. Even in the number of years that I've been doing this, I still have trouble with that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's just part of, like you said, right, that helping nature that most therapists have. And I think it's easy to look at a request that comes in individually on its own and say, okay, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's just one session, but what happens is when they accumulate, right? That's when it becomes more problematic. And I think, sometimes too, for new therapists who are wanting to grow their practices and get, more clients coming in, that there's more of, we really want to help more because we want those clients in our schedule. And so we're more likely to make those concessions in what we're doing and when we're doing it. So it then becomes, a bad habit.
Right. Yeah. So what have you noticed besides just time management that kind of leads to burnout or getting out of balance in our lives?
Yeah, well, that's definitely one, right? Is the time management piece that comes out, and then just, overcommitting to, things, whether it's in our practice or outside of our practice, overcommitting on volunteer activities, or, saying yes to a whole bunch of different things without really considering what the impact is to ourselves. And so, it a lot of it is tied to your time and your time management and how easy it is for us to say yes. I think that's, definitely one of the biggest contributors, but then also looking at the scope of what we're taking on, right? Looking at, what is the size of this commitment? Is it something that is easy for me to do? I can just do it in 5 minutes and that's not a big deal. Or is it a much larger ask that's, that's coming my way, and really, thinking about how much of me needs to show up for this. And how do I show up as my best self as opposed to, my worn out, tired self?
Right. Yeah. So when what have you learned about when some of the ways in which we can begin to change that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, as I said, I noticed that I was having a really difficult time saying no. And so what I had to learn is that for every yes that I say, I'm saying no to something else. And so even though I thought I couldn't say no, like I was a person who had a really hard time saying no, I was actually really good at saying no. I was just saying no to me a lot. Right. So, if someone would ask me to do something, I say, yes, sure. But, like I mentioned a moment ago, I'll do that lunch hour appointment. Well, then I just said no to me actually having a break and getting something to eat so I could, fuel myself for the afternoon. Right. So I said yes to that request, and I said no to, looking after myself and being prepared for the afternoon. And so I that was a real light bulb moment for me, was, recognizing that for every yes I say, I'm saying no to something else. Right. And when I say no to something, I'm saying yes to something else, right? So if that request came in for me to do that lunch hour session and I said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that, I'm actually saying yes to me getting a break and eating.
Yes. That's good. Yeah. I think one of the things that I've noticed is that I think, and I don't know if this is true for you, but I depend on a good bit of automation with my calendar and that kind of thing, as far as putting it out there. And one of the things I've realized that I need to do is being able to have more times that I just say they're not available to anyone, and just except for myself. And maybe that's another thing that I think about, is just actually treating time for yourself as something you would schedule for somebody else.
Right. Yeah. And really taking notice of, the time that you do need for yourself, whether that's admin in your practice. I have, scheduled admin blocks in my schedule, in my practice, where that's my admin time. And so I'm not doing meetings. I'm not doing client sessions or anything else that time. And that exactly what you just said, right? It was about prioritizing that. I can't just shift that somewhere else, or I can't just delete that. That's a task that needs to be done, or that's something that needs to be done, right? Or I need that break. I can't just delete the break. If it's not going to happen, then when is it going to happen, right? So deleting things in my schedule no longer became an option. The other thing that I did in my schedule is, I would go months out and I would book my vacation time. I'd book that time off for myself because I found that, my schedule can get booked out several weeks ahead, with clients, sometimes a couple months out ahead. And then I feel guilty if I want to take time off. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to cancel those client sessions. I can't do that to people. And then I don't have a vacation, right? So, when I went way out in my schedule and said, okay, these are the times off. These are the weeks I want off for my vacation. And I just blocked them so that nobody could book meetings or client sessions or anything else. Then as I got closer to it, I was like, oh, look, I have a whole week off. Where am I going to go? What am I going to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some other things that you've kind of figured out that is helpful for people when just thinking about life balance, that balancing our personal home life kinds of things with work kinds of things?
Yeah, well, I just, thinking about how burnout shows up for us, it really is it's almost like this sneaky little villain that we need to watch out for, right? Because it shows up as emotional exhaustion. You're just drained at the end of the day. You're not feeling connected to your patients or clients. And then that spills over into your personal life. It can affect your relationships, how much you're looking forward to things, your physical health. You may find yourself snapping at your loved ones or losing interest in your hobbies, right? And so it really starts to show up not just in your work life, but also in your personal life. And so, another part of this that is so important is setting boundaries, right? For yourself. They're kind of, we've talked a little bit about that without naming it as boundaries, but, kind of putting those fences around certain areas of your life, and noticing that, my personal time is my personal time. I need that. I need that time with my family. I need that time for different things, because I don't want to be snapping or short with my family members or my friends. Like I want, I want to show up as the best version of me, not just in the therapy room, but also with my family and friends.
Right. Yeah. I think that is so true. And I think it's, kind of going back to one of the things that you were kind of mentioning earlier, is I think we also need to look at our energy level around what we schedule. I know there are a lot of things. I think for all of us, there are different tasks and things that come to mind that aren't necessarily fun things to do, or not necessarily things that energize us as much, but take more energy, but they're also a part of the job, like doing clinical notes and all of those kinds of things are not
Yes.
something that all of us look forward to. But yeah, at least for me, what I've found is that if I do those things when my energy level is higher, I can usually get them knocked out. Might not be the fun thing I want to do when my energy level's higher, but I can get it knocked out quicker if I do it at those time periods. So being able to pay
Exactly.
attention to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. And knowing what your own kind of rhythms are. And, even
Mm-hmm.
knowing from an energy perspective, what your comfort level is in terms of how many clients you need to see in a day or you're comfortable
Right.
seeing in a day. How many are you comfortable and able to see within a week and still have a good energy level? And, something that,
Mm-hmm.
comes up often in my conversations with therapists is the financial piece.
Yes.
But I need to, I really question, do you need to, right? Do you
Yeah.
need to? Like,
Right.
when you're in private practice, you have some flexibility about how much you're charging. And so, if you're finding that you need to see more clients than you're comfortable with in order to, make X amount of dollars, and maybe it's time to revisit things like your fee schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Mhm.
that is so true. And I think the financial piece adds a lot to a stress that a lot of people feel of not either not knowing their numbers, or they're kind of burying their head in the sand and not really looking at their numbers, but also just the knowledge around when you look at your numbers, what is it that you're looking at and how can you understand that? And not getting too caught up in a scarcity mentality. Like you said,
Right. Mhm.
oh, I need to see more clients in order to pay the bills. But it's, yeah, of really looking at that differently.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. And really understanding the flexibility that you do have when you're in private
Mhm.
practice. I think that's, why many of us go into private practice is to have that flexibility, right?
Mhm.
In our schedules, that type of thing. But we can also have flexibility in other areas, in areas of finance and how much, we are charging. And so, just kind of, not that we need to be charging excessively, but just looking at, where is my comfort zone? Where is that zone where I'm showing up really well for my clients and I'm still able to show up really well for my family, right?
Mhm.
And sort of looking at that and saying, okay, it's X number of client sessions that I do really well with. And this is
Mhm.
how much income I need to make to meet my expenses and earn a living, right? And
Mhm.
working those pieces out so that you're able to work at that pace without feeling the pressure that I have to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. Another thought I was thinking about is just in addition to the volume of clients is looking at the clients that you work best with. You want to
Exactly. Yeah,
say
that's a
anything
good
about
point.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Really pay attention to yourself as a therapist. When you look at your schedule and you look at, who you're going to be seeing today, what is coming up for you? Like, how are you feeling about it? Do you look at the names in your schedule and are you excited that you get to see so and so again today? Or,
Hmm.
do you have any kind of like, feelings, when you look at the names? And is it, and then get really reflective on it and look at it, is it the personality? Is it the presenting issues? And see if you can sort of tease out what it is about the sessions that
Hmm.
you're really excited about going into and the ones that you're not as excited about going into. Look for commonalities because there
Hmm.
may be, certain presenting issues that, you just are not excited about working with, right?
Hmm.
And again, there you can start to shift away from those presenting issues and say that's not an area that I'm really wanting to practice in, and
Hmm.
put more of your focus on those cases where you do get excited and they do energize you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. And I think for those of us that have been doing this a while, if you if you look at your agenda for the day or your appointments for the day and you pick out the ones that, oh, I dread seeing this person, or that kind of thing, that is something that I think you need to pay attention to, because you're probably not doing as good a clinical work with those folks as you do the folks that you really connect with better.
I would agree with that completely. And,
Mm-hmm.
some of it may be, our own feelings and how we're showing up. And sometimes we kind of feel that way because the presenting issue in that case may be something that, we're not as strong in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
even noticing that, because that puts stress on us too, right? There's
Right.
a real fine balance, I think, between taking on clients that are going to stretch us and allow us to grow, and taking on a client that is so far out of what we do, that is going to be this huge stretch for us, right? And so,
Right.
and it's something that's very individual to therapists. Some therapists can do a bigger stretch, other therapists have a more limited stretch that they can do and still feel comfortable. And so,
Right.
I wish it was more black and white and we could say, you can, try doing this and not doing that, but it's so individual to the therapist and their personalities
Mm-hmm.
or style.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
it's ironic. When I worked, before I went into private practice, I worked for a nonprofit that worked at-risk children and youth and their families. And,
Yeah.
when I went into private practice, I would take on some youth and people from that demographic. But I realized one of the reasons I got out of that agency job is I didn't really enjoy that demographic or that group of, teens. I mean, I people have heard me say on, or working with kids, people have heard me say before, my daughter told me when she was little, I sucked at playing Barbies. So realize that that's not necessarily my forte, is to be able to work with younger people or work with
Hmm.
youth and children. And so it's okay to, I think, to give yourself permission to say, okay, these are not, I don't need to suffer through or make my clients suffer through me working with people that aren't necessarily a good fit.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
well, Liane, just to change gears a little bit, tell
Hmm.
folks a little bit more about your practice and
Yeah.
kind of the work that you do in your practice clinically.
Yeah, clinically. Good question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so yeah, I think I mentioned there's four therapists in our practice, and each of us has a little different area that we like to work in. Probably my sweet spot is working with individuals, adults is where I'm really
Mm-hmm.
comfortable. And I do enjoy working in the area of trauma. And
Mm-hmm.
if my schedule is too full of trauma cases, then that becomes draining for me. And so,
Sure.
I have
Sure.
my other area of special interest is in spiritual psychotherapy and spiritually
Mm-hmm.
integrated psychotherapy. And so I'm able to, kind of balance both of those interests out in my practice so that, I don't get drained and I'm
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of maintain that balance. And so I try to be pretty careful about the number of trauma clients that I'm working with, because even though I enjoy it, it's pretty heavy at times, right? So
Sure.
this is where those pieces like boundaries that we were talking about a few minutes ago become really important. So there was a saying that I heard one time. I wish I could remember where I heard it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't. But the saying was, I want to give others the best of me instead of what's left of me.
Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And that's why those
Yeah.
boundaries are so important, is so that I can show up in my clinical practice, giving my clients the best of me instead of the worn out what's left of me.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Hmm.
that makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Well,
Hmm.
Liane, I have to be respectful of your time. What sort of parting thoughts might you have around this topic?
Great question. I, would really encourage people to think about boundaries, and how they want to implement that in their own lives. And, whether it's setting one boundary this week, whether, it's no work calls after 7 o'clock or a tech-free dinner, or, really sticking to your schedule and saying, okay, I'm not going to book anything outside of my scheduled times. You doing something that way is something you can do right now to start improving your work-life balance. Also, the other thing that you could do is to incorporate one self-care habit. one activity that brings you joy, and make it non-negotiable in your schedule. Right? It's
Right.
not something that can be changed or moved, anything that way. It just starting, with putting that one boundary in place, putting that one activity in your schedule and making it non-negotiable will start to help your work-life balance and really, begin to reduce the chances of you experiencing burnout.
Yes, yes, I totally agree. I think it's just really, I think sometimes it's good to take an inventory of all of that. And, something that I've done on occasion, and I think it's a good thing to do, is when we're feeling overwhelmed with our time and with all that we pile on ourselves, is to do maybe like a time management study, or just, do a log for a week to see, okay, how am I spending my time? What am I putting my energy into, and what do I want to change about all of that?
Yeah, I would call
Uh-huh.
that a time audit, right? So you can really
Yes,
see
yes,
where that time is being spent. And that's a
you're right.
great way to do it. And you can see, okay, do I want to spend that much time on this task?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I do to change it if I don't want to be spending that much time on it?
Well, Liane, tell folks how they can get in touch with you, and if they want to learn more about your consulting and all that you're
Yeah.
doing, how can they do that?
Yeah. Absolutely. You can find me online. My website is psychotherapy.com, and you can also search Psychotherapy Masterminds on Instagram or Facebook and find me those ways. Those are usually the easiest ways to find me.
Okay, well, good. So, well, Liane, it's good to get to know you, and enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we can have another one here soon. Well, folks, thanks again for joining us, and thanks to Liane for being part of the podcast. And really enjoyed my conversation with her. And I think it's a topic that I know that I've covered a little bit before, but it's always good to revisit it, about setting boundaries for ourselves and just thinking about, how we manage our time. I don't know that I mentioned it at the beginning, but one of the tools that I use that is just invaluable to me is the Full Focus Planner. And you can go to practiceoftherapy.com/full focus planner to find out more about that. That is full disclosure here. That is an affiliate link, but it's a product that I've been using for several years now. It's produced by the Michael Hyatt Company, and it's just a really good way of thinking about setting your priorities and setting your goals and that sort of thing. One other thing I'll mention here too that I think is a good exercise, and I'm not sure that we covered this in this particular episode, but I think it's a good idea to do a time audit every now and then, of just simply really writing down and making note of how you spend your time throughout the day. And I think when we do that, that can always help us with our productivity and help us feel not like we're so pressured with stuff, of really kind of cutting out a lot of the fluff and the things that really are not the greatest things for us to spend our time on. So anyway, that I just throw that idea out to you as well. Be sure to check out Liane's things. You'll find links here in the show notes and the show summary. And also, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, Therapy Notes. They are the leading electronic health record system for mental health providers. They're who I use in my practice, and I'm always impressed with all of the new things that they're adding, and particularly around being able to create customizable forms for your practice. And I'm just really grateful to them for not only sponsoring the podcast, but just the wonderful platform they're providing for me and my practice. There's just a lot there that I invite you to check out. And be sure and use the promo code Gordon, just Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So be sure and check them out. So thanks, folks. Got lots of great guests lined up for future episodes, and love for you to join us there. And be sure to take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast where you might be listening to it. Take care, folks. You You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.